I was finding this material from history, and every so often something would have a particular resonance. I was kind of generally learning and filing, but then there were just moments when things seemed right and seemed pertinent to a particular moment, and the factory work offered me this opportunity to share that idea or that image or that mood with, turn out, thousands of other people. Joy Division's second album, Closer, shows my interest in a photographic dimension of postmodernism. It's a neoclassical image expressed through photography and accompanied by some very ancient typography, I think 2nd century BC, but then put together in the context of an album in 1980. The modernist movement in Germany, epitomized by the Bauhaus, and the Die Stil movement in Holland were things that I knew about. I'd actually never discovered Italian futurism until sometime around about 1980. Found it very exciting. And when New Order came and they had an album called Movement, the idea of quoting Italian futurism seemed appropriate. And a couple of years later, New Order's next album, Power, Corruption and Lies, has a 19th century oil painting by Fantin Latour, juxtaposed with a kind of technical coding, almost like something from an industrial color chart. One of the two main stories we've done with DC is inspired by the black and yellow industrial warning stripes that were on the very first factory imagery. My first kind of icon for factory was an industrial warning sign that I'd found on a workshop door at college. In fact, I'd been looking at every day for a year. And it was a great sign of a vibrating head with the instructions underneath to use hearing protection. And I thought it was a great symbol, and when I got together with Tony Wilson back in '78, and he said he was organising this club night, he was going to call it The Factory, this industrial warning sign came to mind immediately, and I borrowed it from the door. I borrowed the sign from the door, and it was actually the icon on the first factory poster. Hacienda started as a project in 1981 as a result of the kind of phenomenal sales of Joy Division's second album after Ian Curtis, their singer and writer, had died. So this phenomenal amount of money was directed into what became a hole in the ground called the Hacienda. The industrial warning stripes became almost like a signature motif of the Hacienda. Around about 81, 82, similar time, I was working on a cover for another band that had originally been with Factory, Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. I had an ongoing relationship with them. And I discovered actually a print, I think, by 1920s artist called Edward Wadsworth. The image was called Dazzle Ships in Dry Dock, Liverpool. And I loved this term, dazzle ships, and I wanted to find out where it had come from. And it turned out that camouflaged battleships were referred to as dazzle ships. So Andy wrote the whole album called Dazzle Ships. And with a cover for that was an interpretation of nautical camouflage. So the kind of the diagonal stripes, but in a more asymmetric and free-form way. And Hazard has become a hybrid between the Hacienda's industrial warning stripes and these asymmetric camouflage stripes that we'd explored on Dazzle Ships. The other story we've done is the ongoing life of an image that I put on the first Joy Division album. The members of Joy Division gave me an image to do that cover. And the image was from an encyclopedia of astronomy. And it was a diagram or a graph recording the radio pulses from a pulsar, a neutron star. This diagram became the cover of Unknown Pleasures, Factory Records' first album. I commissioned a three-dimensional version of it from some friends who work in 3D modeling, and they created for me a three-dimensional interpretation of the waveform from the cover of Unknown Pleasures. Initially I had a kind of a flat graphic version of it that basically kind of put tone and form into what had just been a linear diagram. This we then explored in 3 dimensions, and I have a sculpture which I called Unknown Pleasure, which is based on their three-dimensional interpretation of it. We were interested in this three-dimensional landscape expressed in line rather than form. And part of the work was this kind of three-dimensional wire mesh. So it was rendering a landscape in 2 dimensions, a little bit like a geography relief map. These are very specifically 2 iconic visual themes that we've expressed through this project. I liked the idea of things looking better because I thought they should look better, not just looking better in order to make people buy them, or in fact to make people buy things that they don't really need. To me, that actually is counterproductive and to some extent kind of denigrates, our understanding of culture and understanding of civilization.